Great, so today I want to make a video updating everyone on the new cases as usual, as well as getting to some other big stuff. Now we do have a gun ban update that is a pretty big story on that. A couple other things to get into that are also very important. Actually, there's a ton of important stuff. Not that everything isn't important, but today it's definitely more important than average, so definitely stay tuned. Um, Canada is up to 59,914 cases with 3,775 dead. Alberta, 5,836 cases, 104 dead. 70 new cases yesterday. 2,942 recovered. 164,722 completed tests. Now, the first thing I wanted to point out is that we officially have more. I believe that's slightly more. Just trying to think off the top of my head. Recovered cases than we do active cases. You know, we got 2,942 recovered. 2,950 would be whatever 5,900. So yeah, essentially we have pretty much exactly the same, roughly the same, probably slightly more. I don't want to do the math off the top of my head right now. It's just not worth the time. But anyway, 104 dead. So again, we just passed 100 dead. Now the thing I wanted to point out, I mean the big takeaway is we've had 3 straight days under 100 cases. The curve is clearly flattened. I mean it did long ago, but it's even flatter. It's probably even trending down. I mean I haven't looked in a couple days, but like I keep pointing out, but people like don't seem to get. And we had Shear yesterday bringing up how Canadians are lazy and they don't want to get back to work. Now, again, as usual, the left takes it completely out of context in that he's right. Like, of course he's right. Like I pointed out, you're a family of 4, you're getting at least $5,000 to not work a month. Again, that's very good money to not work. So of course people don't want to go back to work. Like again, like Andrew Scheer points out the elephant. And again, I didn't vote for Andrew Scheer, so don't give me, oh, you're just a biased conservative. I didn't vote for the guy. Honestly, I really, really dislike the conservatives the last election. So again, the bias card doesn't work here. So again, try again if that's what you're going to try and claim. But again, he's right about that kind of stuff. He's clearly right. Again, you're even if you're someone making your $2,000 a month, you know, you're an individual, you're single, that's still decent money. I mean, unless you're making very good. But again, the thing to point out is that 2,000, you know, it's pretty much $15 an hour for a 40-hour work week, you know, roughly. I don't know exactly what it is off the top of my head, and especially after taxes, that's even harder to figure out. But this the other thing to point out too is that people are driving a lot less. Their expenses are a lot less. So okay, that 2,000 all of a sudden is equivalent to like 2,500 when you account for the amount of money you save not having to drive to and from work. You know, you don't have to you're saving money on clothes. I mean, you don't really need work clothes. Again, you probably don't need as much food. You can save money there. So again, that's the thing to point out too is that people are being paid very well not to work. So of course they don't want to work. Like, come on, he just pointed out the elephant in the room. And again, that's one of the big reasons why there's so much political divide nowadays is we have one side who can't point out the elephant in the room and not get viciously attacked. And that's a massive, massive issue. Um, so again, getting into the other thing, there's 2 big things I wanted to point out here. First is that a petition was created to reverse the gun ban. Now again, that's probably never going to happen, at least not anytime soon. Maybe I don't want to say never, especially if the Liberals get elected again. But again, go sign the petition. I'll probably put a link in the description. If not, you should be able to find it relatively easily. Um, like I say, it probably won't mean much to the Liberals. They won't even, they probably will barely pay attention to it. But at the very least, it is a very good FU to the Liberals if this petition gets, you know, over 100,000 signatures. So go sign it, share it, all that kind of stuff. The other thing to mention too is that there's a big update. Um, so in the gun ban, they wanted to ban, and I mean they put it through, banning guns with a diameter of over 20 millimeters. Now it just happens to be that a 12 gauge without a choke is 20.02 millimeters. And the problem with that is that a 12 gauge is one of the most popular guns for gun owners. It might even be the most popular because it's incredibly common among sport shooters and among, duck and goose hunters. The Remington 870 is one of the most popular guns that exists. So the thing to point out here is that they're not just coming after the scary assault rifles, even though they're not actually technically assault rifles. They're coming after everything, and it's what I pointed out. But again, a lot of people are awake, and again, I commend the people that are actually awake on this issue. But a lot of people are still, oh, they're only banning the scary assault rifles, even though a lot of the guns they banned they banned a lot of bolt action rifles. They banned a lot of like like they banned like the M1A and like the M14, guns that have been around for over 50 years. So again, they're not just coming after the scary assault rifles. They're coming after everything. The end game is a complete and total gun ban. And then after that, they can do whatever they want because there's no opposition. There's the peaceful opposition, peaceful revolution will be pointless because they have a complete monopoly on force, and you don't have any way of fighting back because you don't have any guns. So that's again the thing that I wanted to point out is that again, Canada is headed down a very, very scary path here. Um, so getting back into the virus thing, this is from John Roberts. And again, this is something we knew, but again, I just wanted to reiterate it because a lot of these idiots out there still seem to think that the World Health Organization is the right when it comes to this kind of stuff. Um, so anyway, a senior intelligence source tells me that there is an agreement amongst most of the 17 intelligence agencies that the virus originated in the Wuhan lab. The source stressed that the release is believed to be a mistake and was not intentional. Now, again, regardless of whether or not it was a mistake or intentional, doesn't really matter. China knew that this was a massive issue, and they continued to allow flights from Wuhan, from the rest of their airports, to come into places like Canada, to come into places like Italy, the States, so on and so forth. So regardless of whether or not it was intentional, I mean, if it was intentional, China should face the harshest punishment that a country has ever faced in the history of the world. Even if it isn't, they should still, I mean, every country that owes China a debt should not pay $1 of that debt. Not $1, just boom, wipe it out. We're not paying it. Um, so again, that's the thing to point out. Like I say, China is responsible for this. China is responsible. Now again, the Justin Trudeau's, the Tams of the world, they deserve pretty much the same amount of criticism because they fell. I mean, that's because they agree with them. They touted their BS talking points that anyone with half a brain knew was wrong. China even admitted their numbers were wrong. Underestimated recently. But you still have the Patty Haydu not willing to admit that they were wrong and they made a mistake. So again, just wanted to reiterate that there's the common conspiracy theory is that uh, it came from the fish market or the wet market, and that's complete BS. And for the simple reason that number one, they didn't sell bats there. Number two, the bats that it would have came from live naturally about 1,000 kilometers away from there. So again, that doesn't really make sense. And the other thing too is that the Chinese destroyed the market there. So again, if you're accused of a crime and you destroy evidence, it's pretty much 99% chance that you're just admitting you committed the crime and you don't want to get caught. Um, and the other thing to mention too is that China refuses to allow any third party organization or country to investigate. So again, it's so blatantly obvious. Like this is literally like elephant in the room obvious, but yet you still have people that are denying this kind of stuff. So again, it's just absolutely crazy. Um, this again is something that I've been pointing out, and again, this is the stuff that just flies in the face of the we need to keep things locked down or we're all gonna die crowd. And this is the lineup for the food pantry in South Africa. Like this is, I mean, just look at this, the amount of people that are don't have enough food, and there's been violence, there's been civil unrest, all this kind of stuff has been going on in South Africa, and again, people just seem to like to pretend that, oh, it's all hunky dory, we're all going to be fine. The government can just give us 2,000. I mean, even though a lot of people aren't even getting it, which is complete BS, which don't even get me started on that. But the government can just keep, paying us money not to work from here until eternity. And before we know it, the dollar collapses, and then, we have a, massive, massive, massive unrest. And like I say, I think the world is going to be in for a lot of trouble when it comes to this kind of stuff. And like I say, assuming that history is written from an honest and objective point of view, we are going to look back and people are going to laugh their head off that we completely shut down, pretty much the world economy for something that had an incredibly, incredibly low death rate. Something that most of the deaths could have been largely prevented if we would have just not believed China in the first place and closed the borders. So again, this is going to go down in history as one of the biggest blunders amongst governments across the world, um, especially considering the intelligence and all the kind of stuff that we have. That the fact that we completely botched this entire situation, like I say, it's going to go down in history as a one of the worst things that has happened in a long time, basically. Um, so the last thing I wanted to bring up here, speaking of civil unrest, so Tom Quiggin responded to this tweet. So this guy says, bold prediction: North America will be in a civil war in the next 10 years. And Tom Quiggin, who first I would point out too, Tom Quiggin he was high level military, high level CSIS. He's worked for the RCMP. So again, this guy is a very, very qualified guy when it comes to military intelligence, policing, all this kind of stuff. So again, he's just not some random guy on Twitter. So I want to point that out first. Um, so again, he goes on to say, I would say Europe in 2 to 5 years and North America 5 to 7. But yeah, social unrest and street violence are closer than we think. Higher order violence not far behind. Now again, I think this is part of the reason. Well, part of the reason why the Trudeau government is calling for all these gun bans. That they know, I mean, especially if they get reelected, they know that this kind of stuff is going to happen at some point. Again, we are overdue in society for a war of some sort. Now, the war may not be overly physical. Again, that is possible, but I think it's going to be physical at least in some way. And the war may not be kind of like past wars where there's distinct sides. I think that there's going to be factions and factions within factions. So, you might have the left fighting the right, but then you may have the more, libertarians, you may have the more far left. And again, the most violent people are the far left too. So those are the kind of people that really like the Antifa types. Those people are incredibly violent. I mean, those are the only group of people on the left that support gun rights for the simple reason that they want to use those guns to force the non-believers into the gulags, and if they don't go to the gulags, then they're going to be killed. So again, things like I say, I'm not saying obviously not for sure. Obviously, it's probably less likely than likely. But again, we're overdue for a mass conflict, and given the political tensions going on between within Canada between the East and the West, the tensions going on in the states between the basically the Republicans and the Democrats, or basically I would say the left and the non-left would be a better way of putting it. And then you look at, I mean, the tensions between the U.S. and China, the tensions between the U.S. and Iraq, Iran. There's a lot of stuff going on that is very scary. And the problem nowadays is that, and part of the reason why things are getting so bad, I think, is that you have so many people who are lulled into a false sense of security and that they think everything's all hunky dory. They have the it'll never happen to us attitude. I think most people are good, all this kind of crap that a lot of people nowadays believe because they've been so shielded from reality. They don't understand history, all that kind of stuff. So, anyway, that's the video for today. If you'd like to make sure to hit that like and subscribe, check out my PayPal and email. I got linked in the description. I appreciate any donations, but at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. And last couple things, as always, follow me on Twitter if you haven't already. Again, I just got Twitter, so again, follow me on there. And check out my BitChute channel as well if you haven't checked me out there already too.